Australia's trade surplus hits a record high with lithium the new gold. Space debris from Elon Musk's SpaceX lands in the snowy mountains. And why women are reporting more foot injuries. It's Friday, the 5th of August, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. I'm excited today. It's a Friday and we work pretty hard during the week and it's great just to have a weekend. But what I'm really excited, we've got some cracking stories today. A little bit odd. Like it is business podcast, but there just seems to be lots around today that are just slightly offbeat. We might be pushing it a little bit when we're talking about space junk and women's feet, but still, good show.
No, but look, any show with Elon Musk, I mean, you can automatically make it a business link, can't you?
Always. Richest person in the world. That's business.
Yeah. And hey, Sean, did you know that today is Jeans for Jeans Day?
Is it really?
Yes. Yeah. So make sure if you're not wearing them now, whack some jeans on and donate some money to help raise funds for research into kids facing genetic diseases. I heard about it a little bit on the radio in the last few days, and I thought Jeans for Jeans is always good when you got involved in that at school and all the kids suddenly turn up in jeans for the day. It's just really nice to kind of feel like you're doing your bit to help.
You're part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, that's completely unrelated to business, but it just suddenly it jogged my memory. As soon as you said Friday, the 5th of August, I'm like, today is Jeans for Jeans Day. I will put on my jeans. Anyway, Sean, we have a very good interview coming up today. It's one of my favorite guests, Chris Uhlmann, political editor at Nine, because he is just so across everything that's happening in Canberra and actually well beyond Canberra.
Yeah, look, it's a great interview. We run through the federal government's first couple of weeks in Parliament, from the Indigenous voice through to climate change legislation, the relationship with China. It is one of the best interviews, not from my sense, not from me, but certainly from our guest. It was absolute cracker, worth listening to.
Yeah, completely agree. But the main story this morning, Sean, Australia's trade surplus hit a new record in June of $17.7 billion amid booming iron ore, coal and natural gas prices and sales.
If you want to find some good news about the Australian economy, look for what we're selling to other countries. Now, a trade surplus means Australia is selling more stuff overseas than buying from other countries. Since February, Australia's recorded surpluses of $7 billion, $9 billion, 12 billion, 15 billion, and for June, nearly $18 billion. All that adds to economic growth. It is incredible how much we're making from sales offshore. The latest figures show a big jump in exports led by a rise in gold sales and little change in imports. The result was much higher than anticipated by economists. Now, apart from gold, it reflects strong sales of all those commodities you mentioned, Michael: iron ore, coal and LNG. We've had an incredible run of trade surpluses, no doubt about it. And this at a time when our biggest customer, China, has banned some exports and isn't travelling particularly well.
And Sean, there's another fast-growing export, one that we like talking about here, lithium.
That's right. The Australian Bureau of Statistics took a deep dive into lithium sales. Australia accounts for about 40% of the world's lithium, and lithium is expected to contribute about $9.4 billion in revenue in the 2024 financial year. That puts it behind the three already mentioned, as well as gold. It's huge. The growth in exports has already been extraordinary, more than doubling since May. So June was more than double the sales of May. Lithium, of course, is used in batteries, and buyers just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible story, isn't it? How about local markets? What happened yesterday?
S&P ASX 200 closed down just a touch to 6,975 points. In fact, it finished just 1 point lower, having traded above that 7,000 point mark earlier in the day. In fact, it got as high as 7,020 points. Once again, tech stocks were the best performers following a jump on Wall Street on Wednesday night. REA Group was a standout, up 3%. Telstra was another outperformer, up more than 1%. Among the large caps, the banks were generally higher on the back of the rate rise by the Reserve Bank this week. Commonwealth Bank led the way, up 1.3%. The energy companies had a rough day. Woodside was down 3% and Santos was off 1.3%. The big miners, Rio Tinto, BHP and Fortescue Metals, also fell back. The retailers struggled. Tyro Payments was the best performer, up 16%, while PointsBet Holdings jumped 12%. Explosives Group Orica was worst, down nearly 10%.
And what about international markets?
Wall Street's had a pretty good week, with the broad-based S&P 500 rising. The tech-heavy NASDAQ has been the star, though. It's up more than 5% in trading. In commodity markets, Brent crude is lower again, trading around $97 a barrel. Gold's up slightly, while the Aussie dollar is buying just under 70 US cents.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the federal government's climate change legislation has passed the lower house, 89 votes to 55. It now goes to the Senate.
It was a pretty momentous occasion getting through the House. There were amendments and debate, but in the end, the crossbenchers sided with the government. It now goes to the Senate when Parliament resumes in September. A buoyant climate change minister, Chris Bowen, said the country now needed to focus on how to achieve the 43% reduction in emissions. Greens leader Adam Bandt said that the good work of Labor shouldn't be undone by opening new gas and coal mines. Of course, the Greens failed to get that amendment through in the legislation.
National Cabinet met yesterday, Sean, and most of the discussion was on diseases, COVID, monkeypox and foot and mouth disease.
After the meeting, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he was increasingly confident that Australia had reached its peak Omicron winter wave as hospital admissions fell. But Chief Medical Officer Paul Kelly cautioned it isn't the last wave. On monkeypox, Health Minister Mark Butler said more than 25,000 cases have been recorded across 76 countries in the 13 weeks since the first infection was notified in the United Kingdom. The government has procured more than 450,000 vaccines to help at-risk populations, including gay and bisexual men. And Agricultural Minister Murray Watt announced additional precautions to stop the spread of both foot and mouth and lumpy skin disease. Lumpy skin also affects cattle. It's carried by insects. Anyway, the whole idea is to try and stop both foot and mouth and lumpy skin entering Australia.
All right, now, Sean, we've already reached my favourite story of the day. This is an absolute cracker. Space debris found 400 kilometres south of Sydney belongs to a craft built by Elon Musk's SpaceX.
The Australian Space Agency confirmed that the space junk came from a SpaceX mission. Now, I don't know whether you've seen the photos, Michael, but pieces of the debris were pretty big. There's a photo there of a fairly big gentleman standing in front of it, and certainly the debris is much bigger than he is, and it's speared into the hillside. Apparently, parts of something called SpaceX Crew 1 trunk re-entered the Earth's atmosphere on July 9, and this is the debris from it. A little irony in all this, of course. Last month, NASA was very critical of Beijing after a Chinese rocket fell back to Earth over the Indian Ocean, warning that it could have killed someone, more likely to kill someone if it lands on terra firma, I think.
Indeed. And Sean, if you haven't seen the video, there's some ABC video of the farmer on whose property this piece of space junk landed, just standing in front of this massive piece of space junk lodged in the earth. And it is just the best piece of footage because he's just such a laconic, kind of laid-back guy talking about the fact that he's found this in his he's a sheep farmer and he's found it in the middle of his, and he wasn't there a couple of weeks ago because it's right in the middle of the track and he would have noticed it if it was there. It's just so Australian. It is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, go and track it down.
From high tech to low tech.
Indeed. Now, if you're wondering whether your lender has passed on the hike in interest rates earlier this week, they probably have.
That's right. I always look to see if my bank has moved, and it has. It seems that whatever bank I'm with, and I changed banks last year, my bank always seems to go first. Anyway, ANZ was the second major bank to pass on the higher interest rate to customers yesterday, following the Commonwealth Bank's decision to do so on Tuesday. Macquarie Group has also passed on the increase. Well, it isn't good news for homeowners. Bank shareholders love it. As I mentioned earlier on, Commonwealth Bank, which of course is the largest home lender in the country and passed on the higher rate quickly, well, its share price jumped 1.3% yesterday and was the best performing of the big four on the fact that it passed on the rate hike.
Sean, IFM Investors is expected to push for a board seat at toll roads group Atlas Arteria after increasing its stake to 19%.
This is the group that 1 week ago, after doing due diligence, walked away from Atlas. Since then, IFM has been buying stock, taking its holding to 19% via a direct stake and derivatives. It will easily be the biggest shareholder, and clearly its goals of taking control haven't been abandoned. Atlas has 9 directors, CEO Graham Bevans, and 8 non-executive directors. It's likely that IFM will want to sit on that board table.
Indeed. Now, Sean, we've spoken a lot in the past about Mesoblast, the biotech Mesoblast. We've in fact spoken to the boss of the company on the podcast before. One of the reasons we talk about it is because the share price just jumps around so much. And yesterday, it went into a trading halt and hopes to privately raise cash.
That's right. The regenerative medicine company share price is down more than 50% over the past year. It has several phase 3 clinical trials going on, but it makes minimal revenue. Developing and commercializing treatments is expensive. It has $60 million in the bank, but clearly management doesn't think that's enough, so it's gone out to raise some more.
Mining and construction contractor NSW Holdings has upped its profit guidance, sending its share price up 10%.
While revenue for the 2022 financial year is likely to be $2.4 billion, in line with expectations, earnings will be higher, around $157 million. That's a big number. Boss Jules Pemberton said the business was performing very well despite significant headwinds.
Sean, automation, it seems, is coming to get us all. Well, at least that's the warning that's been around for a few decades. But there is now a report into the jobs most likely to be automated.
Podcasters don't make the list, Michael. Is that good news?
That is a relief. I was a little bit worried that I was about to get replaced by C-3PO.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a ripper?
That would be a ripper, actually. Finance brokers, if you're a finance broker, you're in all sorts of trouble. Well, that's according to this Fathom by Pearson's list of jobs, as reported in the Financial Review. Finance brokers are most likely then stockbroking clerks and librarians. Other at-risk jobs include HR advisors, retail pharmacists, meteorologists and accountants. Tax inspectors are in trouble, so too salespeople, and road traffic controllers. But, Michael, the one that gets me most, the one that I can't believe is at risk of being automated, pilots. I ain't flying in a plane without a pilot.
No, I think I might pass on that one too, if that's all right. I think I'll drive. Yeah. But librarians, I don't know if I actually went to the local library yesterday, and you do everything yourself now. You can you check out your books, you do all of that, and I can kind of see why they would be on the list of these of jobs to be automated, because really, it's just kind of now replacing it back on the shelves. There's no interaction with a librarian anymore. It's actually kind of sad.
Is that right? So I go to the library just occasionally because I need a workspace, but I've never actually checked out, or I haven't checked out a book for many, many years. But the librarians are always very friendly and helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But now you just kind of scan your card on the computer and put your books in underneath the scanner. And it's really just like using the self-serve checkout at Coles.
Oh, wow.
Just for books. Anyway,
there you go.
We digress. We are now going to move on to overseas news, Sean. And OPEC Plus is set to raise oil output by 100,000 barrels a day, below what US President Joe Biden wants.
Mr. Biden travelled to Saudi Arabia to ask OPEC's leaders to pump more oil to help the US and global economies. The US also cleared missile defence system sales to Riyadh and the United Arab Emirates. All of this, theoretically, would help encourage OPEC Plus to boost oil production. But in the end, the cartel decided to only increase production by 0.1% of global demand. That ain't much.
No, that actually sounds quite small, really. Now, Sean, this is getting pretty alarming. China has begun unprecedented live fire military drills in 6 areas around Taiwan in response to Wednesday's visit to the territory by US Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
The island, which Beijing claims as part of China, has been ringed by military exercises. Drills began yesterday and will continue through till Sunday. It includes live firing on the waters and in the airspace around Taiwan. Commercial aircraft have been warned to not fly in the region. The area is a very busy commercial shipping area, and vessels are being forced to sail around the danger zones. Taiwan officials have said the drills violate United Nations rules, invade Taiwan's territorial space, and are a direct challenge to free air and sea navigation. Very, very worrying.
Yeah, it certainly is. From the very worrying to the slightly unusual, Sean, this one has to go into the category of unintended consequences of COVID. Podiatrists are seeing an increase in foot injuries among women due to the greater use of formal footwear, i.e. kind of high heels, as people return to the office.
Yes, there's a bunch of injuries being reported from shin splints to plantar fasciitis among people who haven't worn heels for a couple of years, according to a report in Bloomberg. During the pandemic, lower levels of activity and going barefoot led to weakness and tightness of muscles and tendons. Who knew? Once the restrictions of the pandemic were lifted, many women particularly resumed their use of heels for work without giving their body adequate time to transition back to their pre-pandemic activity levels. All of a sudden, foot injuries. There you go.
That is a cracking story. Certainly one that I don't think I can comment on or say anything about, but it is what a strange consequence of COVID.
Yeah, sure is. I love these little quirky stories that are appearing pretty regularly now about how COVID's affected all sorts of things.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, up next, Sean, is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Chris Uhlmann from Nine.
Yes, as I mentioned, a fantastic chat with Chris. Chris himself is such a smart individual across politics, pretty much like, very few others. And he gives us a rundown on what he thinks the federal government and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, how they've gone in the past couple of weeks, and just a really fascinating chat with him.
Yeah, and the fact that he's a bit of an expert on China as well, and to get his take on what the federal government needs to do to try and navigate the fairly tricky position that we find ourselves in is just really, really interesting. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 5th of August, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.